I think we had a clean run in that, so no problems on those.
Lawrence and Vermeulen were still leading, but by only 2 seconds from Kuhn and Hodgson, while in the production car category, Reuter and Snyman were just 1 second clear of Ryan and Van Heerden. Stage 3 was another challenging one, as most stages on this event are, over 22 kilometers in the same area around the Inanda Dam. The organisers of the Zulu Rally had taken care to choose some of the most beautiful areas in KwaZulu-Natal to stage this event, but it also had to be accessible to spectators, who turned out in their numbers to enjoy the spectacle.
7th overall after the first 2 stages, Jean-Pierre Damso and Kobus Frey were keen to get higher up the order without taking too much risk. John and Douglas Williams, building on a growing reputation as a competitive privateer team, were 10th overall after stage 2 and also looking to improve. Damso Senior and Paisley 6th overall and trying to make up a 3-second deficit to Fecken and Aries. Reigning champions Enzo Kuhn and Guy Hodgson were putting in everything to overcome the 2-second gap between them and rally leaders Lawrence and Vermeulen. They were certainly pushing. Let's join Fecken and Aries on board. Some great flying and some great camera work.
Fecken and Aries pushed hard to make up some lost time. They seem to have solved their problems with traction and won stage 3, moving them up to 2nd overall. Habig and Judd 4th overall after stage 2 and 37 seconds off the pace, were still struggling for grip as they tried to make up the deficit. After their non-finish in Mpumalanga, they desperately needed their little charge to get back on track. Rally leaders Lawrence and Vermeulen, however, would end their rally in this stage with a broken gearbox input shaft. Probably pushed too hard to make up that single second that separated them from production car leaders Reuter and Snyman, and crashed out of the rally on this stage.
Duplessis and Lefkovich, traditionally slow starters, were getting into their stride after a little off on the first stage. Reuter and Snyman were still ahead of the N4 pack, but had the Zimbabwean-British combination in their sights. Breitenbach and Senior were giving a good account of themselves, although there had been some rumblings about them being allowed to use the soft Pirelli tyres as per African rally regulations, but not available to South African competitors. Carson de Fortier, 3rd in Class A7 after stage 2, but only 8 seconds off 2nd place De Wit and Yende on a charge. De Wit and Yende had a gap of 44 seconds to bridge to class leaders Cronje and Birkin. The championship leaders had everything under control, it seemed.
Mohamed Musa and Henry Dearlove in their Class N3 Team Total Toyota Ronex, 4th in class at this point. Fasaki and Lachransi, 3rd in Class N3 after stage 2. Costa Kumantarakis and Barry White surprised leaders in Class N3 in their Toyota Ronex. Craig Tross and Carolyn Swan, leading Class A6. The Class A5 Sasol Toyota Yaris of Claudio Piazza Musso and Greg Fierike, second behind Zulu and Peskin. Zambians Muna Singh and Dave Sihoka in their T. Madison Subaru Impreza well down the order.
After 3 stages, Kuhn Hodgson has taken over the lead, with Ratenbach and Senior moving up to second, well clear of the rest of the African competitors. Hubig and Judd were 29 seconds behind their teammates, while Reuter and Snyman were comfortably ahead of Duplessis and Lefkovich in Class N4. Cronje and Birkin were well clear of De Wit and Yende in A7. In A6, Trott and Swan held sway over Sali de Toy and Gert Jans van Rensburg.
Competitors would cover familiar ground, although grip levels would be substantially different after the entire field had passed through it earlier. We joined JP Damso and Kobus Frey on board.
C1 for left. C240. The bad one, double caution case, left 8 over up, intermediate left right down.
The pair had about 30 seconds to make up and catch JP's old man for 5th overall, 4th among the South African competitors. They were going for it. The pair had had many successes, but an overall victory has eluded them so far. Watch JP using the handbrake lever to help the car change direction at speed. Damso Senior and Robert Paisley had 19 seconds to make up to catch Jürgen Specken and Pierre Aris for 3rd in the South African standings.
The Volkswagen crew really had the bit between their teeth and were taking time off the front runners in this stage. The spectators were loving it, and so were the competitors, now on familiar terrain. Fitzer Duplessis and Dave Lefkovich were also beginning to make their presence felt among the Class N4 runners. Wilken and Godrich made a great comeback in this stage after their problems in Stage 3. Ratenbach and Senior buoyed by their strong showing so far. Tien Schubert and Lawrence Duplessis in their Class A7 Volkswagen Polo.
Trott and Swan still leading Class A6. Stefan Wilken and Gert Nienaber in their A6 Panna Volkswagen Polo. Andy Haig-Smith and Eugene LaRue in their React-backed Toyota Corolla 4th in Class A6. Class N3 leaders Costa Kumantarakis and Barry White. Rodney Pisagi and Arnu Legranzi chasing down the N3 leaders. Mohamed Musa and Henry Dearlove 3rd in N3. In the superimposed shot, it's easy to compare speeds, and Serge Damso is slightly quicker than Jürgen Specken on this section.
After Stage 4, the top 3 teams were covered by only 32 seconds, while Duplessis and Lefkovich had taken over the lead in N4 after the demise in Stage 4 of early leaders Reuter and Snyman. Stage 5 was a repeat of Stage 3, and if the last 2 stages were anything to go by, the battle up front was going to intensify. The Zulu rally had already taken its toll. Who would be next? Dreaming of a rally career, perhaps? Specken and Aris knew they had the machinery to challenge for a top spot and were going all out to make up the deficit of 18 seconds behind Serge Damso and Robert Paisley. At the same time, the Toyota crew only had 14 seconds to make up on Kuhn and Hodgson. Breitenbach Senior had lost some time to the S2000 cars in the previous stage and were looking at catching up again.
Habich and Judd were still within striking distance of the front runners and were also pushing hard. Now, well inside the top 10, John and Douglas Williams were not far off the pace set by the works cars. Damso Jr. and Frey were having a steady rally, but they were gradually dropping off the pace at the front. Kuhn and Hodgson, however, had run into brake problems in the previous stage and would lose about a minute in stage 5. Wilkin was doing a remarkable job considering that he had been flat on his back for more than 3 weeks. But although he and Godrich were lying second in N4, they were a long way behind. Duplessis and Lefkowitz were able to control the pace at the sharp end of the production car category with almost 4.5 minutes in hand over Wilkin and Godrich. Richard and Natasha Vaughan in their N4 Mitsubishi Lancer. Muna Singh and Dave Sehoka from Zambia.
Mark Cronier and Chris Birkin remarkably ahead of the N4 runners and comfortably in the lead of Class A7. Fourth in A7, Adrian Karth and Des de Fortier. Second in Class A7, Chris de Witt and Patrick Yende. Eugene Lawrence and Derek Jacobs lying second in Class A6. Stefan Wilken and Gert Nienaber fifth in A6. Fourth in A6, Andy Haig-Smith and Eugene LaRue in their Toyota Corolla.
Lying second in Class N3, Rodney Versace and Arnu Legrancy, about a minute down on Kumantarakis and White. About 20 seconds further back in N3, Mohamed Musa and Henry Dearlove. The class leaders were not putting a wheel wrong. The only runners left in Class N2, Etienne de Toy and Patrick Vermark. Gugu Zulu and Carl Peskin were back to second in Class A5. About 2.5 minutes behind Charles Conradi and Alvin Kutsia. Third in A5, Muzia Mabanga and Dani Strijdom.
At the end of stage 5, Damso and Paisley had taken the overall lead, 18 seconds clear of Fecken and Aries, while Cronier and Birkin were 7th overall and leading A7, with Duplessis and Lefkowitz still ahead in N4. The final stage of day 1 was a repeat of the first stage, and competitors were aware that a sting in the tail often awaits the unwary at the end of a day's rally.